executives and union officials. What I hope I show in Highwire, and what I think that the current entwined crises of the subprime mess, the housing slump, the credit crunch, financial market turmoil, and incipient economic downturn show is not one of these arguments hold water today. Just consider, the incentives are in the right place. There is clearly, I hear it every time I write about the subprime housing debacle, there is clearly a sense among many people that reckless borrowers should take the hit. But let's think a minute about that. It is very clear by now that the spillover effect from a bad borrower is quite astounding. The cost is not just paid by that borrower, it's paid by the guy who owns the house next to him. It's paid by the person, everybody else in the subdivision. Arguably, it's paid by American homeowners generally. The subprime mess essentially kicked the housing market, the housing bubble into reverse. Or take the argument that business and government no longer wants to or can pay for risk-sharing arrangements. In fact, one of the things that's happened since this crisis started is that those elements of government that can afford to pay for things are rolling out safety nets, not reeling them in. And here I think about the Federal Reserve. I think when the history of this period is written, the decision that was made to spread the financial safety net that the Federal Reserve provides, not just under banks, but to spread it out essentially across the whole financial system, will turn out to have been a crucially important one. It remains to be seen whether it was a wise or not wise one. My suspicion it was a wise one. Or finally take the idea that we'd reached some new plateau, that we are like every other economic unit. I think that the arguments that I make in this book, and I think that the current crisis that we face in the economy shows that families are not like other economic units. Families are not, after all, financial firms. Households are not hedge funds. It turns out what we're learning in these crises is that we are, in the language of finance, so long, labor and houses, that we cannot diversify ourselves away from the risks that we've now been assigned to bear. The free market, the ownership society, the free market makeover story turns out to be just that, a story, and a dangerous story for many Americans. American history has been described as one that moves in pendulum swings, and over the last generation, we have assuredly swung farther than perhaps at any other time than the frontier days and the industrial era of the late 19th century towards free markets. But there is another direction which the pendulum swings, and that is towards at least a minimal level of mutual obligation to each other, towards some stability, towards risk sharing rather than risk shifting. But historical pendulums, unlike physical pendulums, do not reverse the direction of their swing on their own. They must be pushed. For most Americans alive today and for their children, restoring some semblance of balance and stability to their economic lives and reestablishing some minimal sense of mutual obligation between employer and employees, between citizens and their government, is likely to be every bit as much of the defining challenge of our time as a war on terror or any other of a laundry list of hurdles we must cross. Change will not come easily, especially because of the current state of Washington's finances. But come, I suspect they will. And when those changes come, they will reestablish a set of values and protections that lie at the heart of what generations have meant when they say America. Thank you. I would be more than happy to entertain questions. That's covering a lot
Yes,
of
we will
ground.
now open our Q&A portion of our lecture tonight. We want to remind you that our lecture tonight is broadcast for radio, so all questions must be into the microphone. Please state your name before your question, raise your hand, and wait for a Zócalo staff to get to you. Also, at this time, our buckets will be going around, and we do appreciate any and all support. So, questions?